That's
That's
right.
what you were talking about, wasn't it?
That's exactly it. Yes.
All right. You were going to bet on the pants, but you had to bet on this.
Yes. We're betting on something, one way or another. There was a bet to be taken right now. So, I bet you we're not going to ask any questions yet because we got to talk Ring of Honor.
Does that mean you're still looking for Charlie's question that he sent you?
No, I have several questions, including questions from Starkville, Mississippi here, in case we get to them. But we got to talk about Ring of Honor last week. You said you wanted to watch it again this week.
Yes, I did. And I was just kidding you about Charlie's question. I'm sure you will get to Starkville, but I know that you have no problem finding his questions. But anyway, yes, I did want to talk about Ring of Honor again because, as we said last week, we got a lot of good feedback on it. Here's a company who, instead of hot-shotting when there's no need to hot-shot, the ratings for AEW and NXT that are in the ratings war are pretty much similar, or I don't want to say stagnant. They go up and down based on opposed, unopposed, but within a certain range. They have not really gained a ton nor lost a ton. They are somewhat similar and have been for months and months, right? Is this a fair assessment? Not talking about who's winning the race, just talking about in their particular neighborhoods, the ratings for both of those programs have been within a certain range.
Yes, I would say so. Consistently so.
Now, Raw and SmackDown are losing a bit because they're just actively just sucking. But nevertheless, instead of hot-shotting and just giving people more of the same shit when right now, basically the same people are watching everything, Ring of Honor is the one company that we've seen that tried to say, you know what, let's just slow this fucking down. We've already got talent that's quarantined. Let's not let the rest of them, be paralyzed. All the stupid stunts and the furniture and everything. Let's get back to wrestling. Let's do a tournament. Let's provide programming. Let's profile our talents. And I guess not even all of their talents, because they've got a lot of international people that have not are not allowed to be in the country. But let's take our talents that can perform this style and let's get this over. Let's get something over. Let's establish these guys. Let's establish a baseline. This is what the sport is. And then over a period of however long it is that this unfolds, after this tournament, whatever they do from here, feed back in the shit that we now take for granted that is in every match, that's so repetitive and redundant. Everybody dives. Everybody uses a blunt instrument. Everybody gets run over with a fucking truck. Everybody does everything. They're concentrating on building something for the future so that when somebody does go outside the parameters of good taste and decency, whether they cheat or they lie or they steal or they're just an over-the-top personality or a little bit stranger of a gimmick, that starts standing out. If you can build something to where when somebody throws a closed fist punch, there's repercussions, then it's a whole lot easier to do an angle than it is when it's chaos reigns in a particular place and nobody is ever penalized for doing anything, no matter how heinous. So this is what Ring of Honor's decided to do with their pandemic and with their time off from selling tickets and having live crowds, is concentrate on their base product, profile their talent, give them something to fight for, and doing something positive for the future of their business, which is basically what they're doing. Is they're doing a restart of pro wrestling from 125 years ago. Brian, what do you think? Wrestling was wrestling 125 years ago. And if somebody got rough and, on the break, it was a goddamn case for, mention in the newspaper. And then it got opened up more and more and more and more until finally now we've come completely around. And now, hopefully, it won't take that long, but they're spotlighting the base product because their ratings are going to be the same. And they're owned by the company that owns the stations. So they have programming there. But it's not like if somebody watches a wrestling program, to me at this point in time, in this day and age, except for as we've talked about, the peripheral people who they lose from Raw and SmackDown because it just fucking sucks and they got better things to do with their life now. But the rest of these programs is the diehard wrestling bubble, and better to think long term for your product than just show those ever diminishing amount of people more and more shit that you can't top. Does that make sense what I just said?
I think so. It is certainly the sports-based presentation that a lot of people have wanted, and more than anything, it completely stands out because WWE has their style of wrestling. NXT's slightly different. They try to take things a little more seriously there. AEW, we've said it before, it's not an alternative to WWE, it's alternative WWE. This is radically different. And, I'll bring it up here. One of my thoughts watching this week is, it will suck after the pandemic if they just go right back to the way things were. This is a wonderful opportunity to kind of rebrand Ring of Honor and make it a little bit different, and in doing so, make it stand out from everything else in wrestling. Because AEW is the core of guys that were in Ring of Honor for a few years now. They all went to AEW, abandoning Ring of Honor all in one fell swoop. But this is a real chance for Ring of Honor to do something different and rebrand themselves. I don't know if they'll take it that way. I just hope that after the pandemic, it's just not right back to silly angles or anything else, because I think there's a really great opportunity here. It's so unique and so different, and it's being done so well on that show.
In that case, if they get a bunch of good feedback on it, then maybe they won't be tempted to go back to the same old gaga. Because, I was thinking of something else here when I looked at not only some of the stuff that getting ready for the watch along, I was just seeing some of the things that were on the network and remembering what happened around those instances. Do you know what doesn't draw in wrestling anymore, ever? An angle. Because you can't tell them from the rest of the fucking program. It is switched to where, 30 years ago, yes, there was a lot of talent on the cards. In the Crockett locker room, we had Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes and the Road Warriors and the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express and Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson and blah, blah, blah. The fans were seeing those guys on every house show and every TV also. But we could tell when business was going to be up, not by the matchup, but by when an angle was done on television, or when a hot finish was done and it was showed. That's how we saw that business was going to be up. You could tell because of the response to the angle that was shot. That's the whole reason for shooting angles in the history of wrestling, is to increase business. So, but now the names and just the first time, so-and-so against so-and-so, we haven't seen that before. And then it's downhill from there. Once you've just done that match, the people are like, now we've seen it. Whereas in previous years, as long as your angle was good and as long as your finishes in the program were good, you could have the same match multiple times in the same markets until you gave the people what they wanted to see in the end. But now it's just once they've seen two guys wrestle each other, okay, we've said now we need a new dream match. The angles don't mean anything because they can't tell the goddamn angles from everything else that's done on the fucking television shows. Just in my opinion. But anyway, yes, this is a sports-based presentation, and it flies by. It's an hour show. If you zip through the commercials, even less than that. And what more could you ask from formatting? You understand, they recapped the previous week's matches. They had fresh comments from the guys that had won last week. And then they did the same thing this week as they did last week. A package on each of the guys, a sit-down package on each of the guys in the two matches in the tournament, and then their match. And I had not seen, I'll be honest, I hadn't seen David Finlay. Obviously, he's Fit Finlay's son. I knew of him and know who he is, but I had not seen him.
Based on who he is, I've never seen him do an interview before. And we'll talk about their interviews in a bit. Were you surprised he didn't have an accent, that he has he's an American apparently? I didn't realize he's from Georgia.
Well, yeah, well, no. Well, Fit moved over here in the early 90s to work for WCW. That was almost 30 years ago. How old do you think this kid is?
Well, late 90s.
No. Fit was in WCW in what, by 93-ish?
No way.
94-ish?
No,
wasn't
maybe
he?
97 probably. 96 or 97.
Okay, well, that's 24 years. I bet you the kid's 25. So point is, he doesn't sound like Cadbury. No.
Those promos before every match and last week's show as well, I'm blown away how good they are. Ring of Honor did a great job using the archival footage wherever they can. I mean, for the Seidel match, when you see him and Delirious as young guys and now today, it's just they did a great job with it. But the ability of the guys to sit there and talk about professional wrestling, treat it like it's real, which is the thing we're always saying. We're not saying the fans have to believe it's real. Treat it like it's real. These promos are so good. I mean, they're so effective. Everyone seems genuine. We'll talk about Delirious in a bit, but everyone seems genuine. Everyone seems like a real guy. You understand their story, their motivation.
And hey, and let me just say this, it saves some of these guys because, I mean, still Matt Sydal does not have a tonal quality to his voice that would intimidate you. Let's put it that way. And David Finlay, like you said, not only didn't have an accent, but also he's young. Some of the other guys that they have from last week, the point is they take younger looking, younger sounding guys that in the AEW environment just look like, whiny, nasally voiced kids. But they sit them down as an individual, and you hear them talk, as you said, naturally, and you hear about their sports and athletic background with B-roll to back it up, pictures or video of them competing and doing shit, and it comes off like a UFC package, and then you can excuse a guy's got a whiny voice because some of the UFC fighters do too. And they're speaking about themselves truthfully in terms of I traveled to Japan and I trained in this discipline and I did this or I whatever, and they're not talking about wrestling like it's real. They're not talking about it like it's not. They're omitting the fact that it's a work. Everything else they're saying is a shoot. Who they've traveled and who they've fought and how they've trained and what they want. As Jarrett used to say, tell them the truth as long as you can, because then when you start working them, they won't know the difference and they'll buy it. Because if you start out with horse shit, they're distrustful from the beginning. So all these guys are speaking about their backgrounds, how they feel. They're omitting that wrestling is a work, but everything else is pretty much natural. And the thing with Delirious. And Delirious works his gimmick, and that you will never see a picture of him without his mask in public. He always works the gimmick, but even in this way, he modified it to where they used the English subtitles, and it stood out because it was different than what everybody's been doing. Somebody actually did some kind of wrestling bullshit here. But it was done in still, I mean, what'd you think? Still in a serious way that told the story of how they were friends.
Well, yeah, when I said, we'll talk about Delirious, I wasn't saying that was bad. I like that. I like the fact that he was able to convincingly talk in gibberish and they put up the subtitles.
Yes.
But there was nothing silly about it. Like, he was looking serious. He was talking in his gibberish. The subtitles told the story.
If he'd have been talking Japanese and the subtitles were there, it was so effective. It was like it was treated like it was the same thing, like he was speaking a language. It's not. It was the hokey done unhokily. But that's the point. You've got to, and a lot of people are going to watch one of these shows and they're going to say, "Well, there's no entertainment and there's no trash talking." Right. Because this is the start. This is the first round of the tournament. This is the beginning of a new presentation of a new style. If you just, as Dutch Mantel used to say, if you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got. there has to be somebody that says, we're going to fucking hold on here. We're going to get back to the goddamn root of the matter. We're going to lay down a baseline of behavior in our sport that when someone comes along that breaks those rules or that stands out from the crowd or that is different because they're such a wild, over-the-top personality, either people like them or they don't like them, but they can't be contained. But if everybody's crazy or there are no rules or everything's fucking open for fucking discussion, you've just got a mess, which is what everybody else right now has got.
And when someone finally does start talking trash, it's going to stand out.
Yeah. Oh, just somebody already on Twitter said, well, the first motherfucker that won't shake that other cocksucker's hand is going to be an asshole. Yes, that's the idea. Anyway, David Finlay, you mentioned, and Rocky Romero was the first match in the sports-based presentation, the graphics. Boy, if only one of these other companies had anybody that was any good at statistics, instead of hiring a fucking nerd Mark to write comedy statistics. If they had a professional statistician to check this out, because these stats are shoots. In Ring of Honor, they've gone back and done it. Rocky Romero is 15-6 all time against David Finlay in New Japan. Finlay is 6-2 overall in Ring of Honor, but he's 12-4 in New Japan so far in 2020. It makes everybody look good and nobody look like an idiot, and nothing about, the fucking guy going to be a drunk and going to do some yeehaw cowboy shit. That's what I noticed about the statistics.
It's really funny when you think about it. AEW, they're using a lot of the guys that have been the stars of Ring of Honor the last several years. They're doing that style of wrestling with some elements of WWE mixed in. Ring of Honor is doing what AEW said they were going to do. They haven't been doing it up until this point, but it is interesting that now, here at this point, Ring of Honor is now doing the sports-based wrestling with the statistics and everything being logical and making sense. And once again, I'm going to rave about this. Fantastic commentary.
Yeah.
This commentary team is the best in wrestling right now. And I know that they're not doing angles, so you're not hearing like, oh my God, he hit him in the head with this or whatever. They're calling it like wrestling, but I'm blown away by how good Ian Riccaboni, I'll get this straight. Riccaboni, and I'm forgetting his partner's name.
Caprice Coleman.
And Caprice Coleman, they are fantastic together.
Okay, listen to what I wrote, the first line in my notes on this match. Ian and Caprice should be on a sports network, because that's the tone of their voice and their delivery. Not only are they doing a good job with what they're saying and playing the parts, where Ian is, Ian is obviously the play-by-play guy, the lead announcer, your Pat Summerall. I just pleased all the 50-year-olds. And Caprice is the classic color. Oh, and I've said, somebody got on Twitter and said, why did Cornette say Caprice sounded like a colored guy? You dipshits, color guy, color commentator. The color guy in any sports broadcast is supposed to be the expert, the analyst, the guy who tells you how something affects you, whether the block in football or the throw in, wrestling or whatever the case. And Caprice is doing that. He's been a wrestler, but he's glib, but he doesn't sound like a professional announcer. He sounds like the ex-jock, and they match together so you can tell each one of them apart by listening to them, and you want to listen to what they're saying, because it's not just fucking hoo-ha that's going by at all the same tone. And I love the tail of the tape, even though some of these guys are just painfully small, and that exposes that, but still the tail of the tape you get in boxing, you get in MMA. That's the first thing that we wanted to do, and I'm obviously Delirious is still head of creative on this thing, but that's one of the standards that we used to differentiate Ring of Honor when Sinclair first went on the air, to differentiate it from the entertainment wrestling. But anyway, with Finlay and Romero, these guys can work and they had a good match. I like that they keep the clock going during the commercial breaks, and then they show a highlight when they come back, but it wasn't like, it didn't hurt the integrity of their sports-based presentation, because you can tell that amount of time is what elapsed, right? So it's not like they're just trying to pass something off on you. But these matches, like I said, this isn't something you can do with every talent in every match, because a lot of them wouldn't be able to hang at this style, especially the ones that didn't have good training backgrounds or haven't been to Japan. And you can't do it like this forever, because people would, honestly, the same as AEW has a crowd that just likes wrestling to be a goddamn shit fest, there is still a limited audience for people who want to appreciate the pure art form of professional wrestling without any trash talking and angles and cheating and lying and stealing and whoring around and etc. But you can open it up later. They're doing a tremendous job, and then those things will register. And right now, like we said, they're using their time. Finally, Rocky Romero forced David Finlay to use his second rope break. They only get 2, and then if you're in the ropes, you can still be pinned or submit. It doesn't matter. But as far as Rocky had pretty much taken Finlay to the limit to get out of that, then Finlay turns I do hate this name. Romero tried a sliced bread.
You know, when I heard that, and I've heard it before, but when I heard that, I said, I wonder what Jim thinks of that name.
Well, because Spanky started it, and there's another name I hated. I didn't hate the guy, but the name was just so silly. But somebody ought to come up with a different type of name for that. But that's, the sliced bread into a nice-looking backbreaker, and then Finlay hit his finish. Boom, 1, 2, 3. A nice match. And then the second match, as we said, was Delirious and Matt Sydal. The packages, especially with Delirious, told the story. They were friends. They trained. They broke in. They are friends. They trained and broke in together. They know each other. They had the visuals and the graphic stuff, to pictures and video to back this up. Here was my favorite statistic. Delirious has been the head booker of Ring of Honor since sometime in 2011. I can't remember when 2010, because it was, late 2010, Kerry changed from Adam Pearce to Delirious. So in 10 years, I don't know if you saw this or not, but would you have ever guessed what his career Ring of Honor TV record is?
I was shocked when I saw that.
1-0.
I couldn't believe it when I saw that. I said, that can't be right.
And I think I remember when it was, because it was one of the on the road type tapings that we were doing in the early days. And I believe it may have been somewhere in the Midwest, to where it was around St. Louis. But no, Delirious took the booking job as seriously when he got it as any body that I've ever been around took it, being a part of creative or being given a shot as booker or whatever. And the first thing he decided to do was only work sparingly. He loves to wrestle, and you can tell the fucking condition he's in, by the way. He's fucking shredded, just ripped, great shape, but he loves to wrestle, but he would only wrestle on smaller shows and put guys over. And occasionally, because the people liked him, he'd get a win, in a underneath match on a spot show. And even then, that was rare, because he didn't want people thinking he was pushing himself and etc. And but after 10 years, he's been on ROH TV one time, but he won that one. So he always puts himself over every time he's on television. But it did list tournaments that he had won, because he's pretty much put his wrestling career, think about this, anywhere else on ice for Ring of Honor for that job over these last 10 years. He went to Japan a couple of times early on when he was helping foster the relationship first with Noah and later with the different companies. And then Sydal, they came up with his 5-2 in Ring of Honor versus Delirious. So he's beaten Delirious in Ring of Honor more than he's won. Yeah, he's won more than he's lost. Is what I'm trying to say.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, but is Delirious responsible for this Pure title tournament?
He's the head of creative. So that's why I've talked about working with him in the past. He took the job seriously in terms of when he was given the chance to be Booker. I think actually, I don't see how he's a much more laid back person than I am, which is probably how he's avoided either going to prison or a lunatic asylum. But he not only takes that seriously, but he takes the business seriously. And, he's been on creative this whole time, and they've had other people in there with him at various points. And I think they made a concession to one of the British talents earlier this year that didn't work out well. But, you can always count on the guy you can always count on. And he's been there. And he's always had – he was obviously you have to have entertainment in wrestling. But Delirious was on board with the idea of actually doing something different from the start that would help the guys and help the business in terms of not having to get run over with fucking tanks and, end up in body casts from every match, and to have a little bit more serious approach. And so I don't want to give him credit for everything single-handedly, because there's a bunch of fine folks working on this, but I would have to think that at this point, this is his creative.
If that's the case, my hat's off to you. We've watched AEW every week this year, NXT, we've watched Raw, we've watched SmackDown. This is the best show I've seen all year.
Well, I was about to say, he's the only head of creative as consistently, because now he's 1-1 in Ring of Honor television because he tapped out for the other guy. Dusty never tapped. This match.
If it was Dusty, every guy would be doing a promo about Delirious on TV.
and then Delirious would figure four one guy while he was small packaging the other guy. But no, anyway, this match, Delirious and Seidel, was I thought the tightest, most legitimate looking wrestling match, because let's face it, Delirious going back 10 or more years was teaching the Ring of Honor wrestling training school. So he works out constantly. You can tell by the condition he's in, but he does ring work also that it relaxes him, right? So he's in fantastic shape. But they were able to transition in and out of leapfrogs and spots and then go back to wrestling and look like they never lost the plot of a contest. I love now they've started establishing some things. A guy got a warning for his first closed fist punch last week. They established the rope break system last week. Now this time, Delirious used a rope break as an offensive move. Seidel had a hold on him, but he grabbed the top rope, which the referee called as a rope break. But he grabbed the top rope so that he could vault up and do an offensive move. So he used one of his rope breaks to deliver something to his opponent. Imagine this strategy. It's cool to get a base and reestablish the rules. Remember when you were a fan, everybody knew the rules of wrestling, and instantly when a heel had done an automatic DQ or something the referee should have seen, that instantly got a reaction because all the fans knew, and now they just sit through it because they don't think it means anything. And at one point, Matt Seidel, did you see the splash on Delirious while Delirious's legs were bent back underneath him?
Oh, I felt that one, yeah.
Fuck me, I would have never walked again with the shit that I've got in my knees. But so then he did that and started the leg kicks and some reversals, and then finally tapped him with the Cobra Clutch. And there you go. A nice hour of wrestling.
Are you actually going to watch next week with Kenny King?
I'm going to watch the first half. I wouldn't watch a Kenny King match for all of money, marbles, or chalk in China. That's an obvious difference of opinion I have with Ring of Honor management, that they let that lying sack of shit slink back in the door after his fucking run in TNA that he fucked everybody for, including lying to me, lying to Delirious, going back on his handshake agreement, fucking his partner, Rhett Titus, fucking Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin, fucking Ring of Honor, goes down there to be a star, and then he flunks out because he's the shits, and then he slinks back in and they let him. I wouldn't have done that. But I'm the one that had to go to Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin, and when I had to talk them into putting them over, because I said, well, they're going to be deader than 4 o'clock if he stays, so he's given us his word that we're going to be able to work this out. And then I had to go back to Charlie and Shelton and go, you were right, I was wrong, you should have put him over, we should have done a different thing. But some people are more forgiving than I am. But I'll watch next week for half the program. But once again, this is what we were promised over on another channel. So it's obviously doable. They just can't figure out how to do it.